This 11 o'clock update, what are you seeing?
That's right, Dan. There are some slight changes that we want to talk about here as we go forward in the next 5 days or so as it potentially moves up along the southeast coastline of the United States. Yesterday, it jumped off the coast of the Dominican Republic, became a Category 1 hurricane with winds over 74 miles an hour. Right now, we have winds of 75, but with it being our second hurricane of the season, when we look back at climatology, typically, we see the second hurricane of the season occur on or around August 28th. So we're coming in about a month ahead of schedule here, and it's also our 9th named storm, so we're well ahead of schedule on that as well. Broad overall picture here of the infrared satellite imagery in the Atlantic Basin. We're going to hone in on what's going on with Isaias right now, again as a Category 1 hurricane as it's moving through the Turks and Caicos and headed for the Bahamas. Visible satellite imagery shows a pretty healthy looking storm here. Doesn't resemble a very powerhouse of a hurricane, but it is starting to get there and organize just a little bit better. Now it's got healthy outflow aloft, and it has inflow channels down to the south. That shows us that it's starting to ventilate a little bit better. But there are some hurdles on the way as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours. I also want to point out, because earlier this week we were talking about the immense size of this system. It was stretching over 1,200 miles in diameter. Now it's contracted a bit, down to around 500, and that's allowing that wind field to condense and get stronger, which is why it's strengthened to a Category 1 hurricane. So what are the factors in play here? Well, again, strengthening, we have dry air from the Saharan air layer that's going to be in play here for the next 24 to 48 hours. Increasing wind shear as well, but factors for strengthening, extremely warm sea surface temperatures. We're talking water that's 85 degrees or warmer. You only need 80-degree temperatures to sustain tropical development and growth. And those warm waters extend to a depth in the Bahamas and the southwest Atlantic, and the forecast track, right now at least, takes it over the Gulf Stream, which is pretty much a limitless supply of very warm water. Let's start with the factors against. We have dry air in place. We're looking at the water vapor imagery here, and off to the west, the yellows and oranges indicate extremely dry air, a piece of the Saharan air layer, and if that gets pulled into the circulation, it'll start to choke it off. Also, we have southwesterly wind shear that's going to kick on in. First, let's understand what wind shear is. It's a change in direction and wind speed with height. Hurricanes are vertical systems. Those thunderstorms need to develop and get to a high altitude. If there's winds that are increasing and changing direction aloft, it's going to blow the tops off of those thunderstorms and disrupt the overall wind flow of the storm, choking it off and eventually helping it to deteriorate. Now the factors for it, a lot of warm sea surface temperatures here. You see in the southwestern Atlantic heading through the Bahamas, we have temperatures well into the middle 80s, and the ocean heat content, meaning the heat in the ocean extends down to a depth, is there too. So there's a lot of energy available for this system to use. And on its track, if it does move along the southeast coastline of Florida and southeast United States, the Gulf Stream is also located here, so that's going to bring a limitless, pretty much, supply of very warm waters for it to use for energy. So here's the forecast track as of 11 o'clock from the Hurricane Center. Takes it towards the southeast coastline of Florida as a higher grade Category 1 storm with winds up to around 90 miles per hour at that point, moving due north and then pretty much paralleling the southeast coastline before potentially moving onshore somewhere around Wilmington. I want to draw your attention to the fact that the cone of uncertainty here is very, very large. There's a larger margin of error, and it could pretty much track anywhere within this, but the storm overall will have impacts well outside of it. So we'll have to watch this carefully and see exactly how things start to pan on out. As we look at the storm here from a different angle in terms of the computer models and how they see things, there are two distinct clusters. A batch of them that are offshore to the east of Florida, and a growing number of models that are starting to show it heading inland into Florida. So this is a trend that we start to see develop here over the last 12 to 24 hours, and if that continues, we could see this shifting a little bit farther to the west and farther inland, meaning a storm interacting with land sooner, and meaning a weaker system too. Let's compare the two major global models, the GFS and the European model here. The European is going to be the red circles, and the GFS is going to be the yellow. As we play out in time here, pretty good agreement and consensus between the two as we get to Saturday evening at 10 p.m., moving along the southeast coastline and off towards the north, towards Charleston, South Carolina. Going a little bit farther out in time here, this is where they start to diverge a little bit. We have a slower European solution, a much faster GFS. If the European was to play on out, we could look at a longer duration storm here, as it takes a little longer to move along the southeast coastline. So in conclusion here, what we know right now: impacts are probable in Hampton Roads Monday and Tuesday, but they are not guaranteed. We're going to see this track shift a little bit in the coming days. Rough seas and rip currents already will be increasing this weekend all along the southeast coastline, including the Outer Banks and Virginia Beach. The extent of tidal flooding, rain totals, and wind is still uncertain. Of course, that will remain uncertain until we get a track that is nailed down. That's the latest that we have here in terms of what to expect as we go forward in terms of Hurricane Isaias. We'll watch it carefully. The Hurricane Center will issue a new updated track as we get closer to 5 o'clock this evening. An intermediate advisory comes in between those, in between 11 and 5. At 2 o'clock, and we'll get an adjustment or an update on its strength currently as it's moving through Turks and Caicos and into the Bahamas as well. We'll have your full forecast here locally, what's going on for your weekend, up until we get to the potential of dealing with Isaias in just a few minutes. Dan?
Okay, Tim, we'll see you then. Thank you. And coming up, making the pandemic political.